Hey folks, how are you all going? I hope you're well. I thought I'd take a moment to record a video about the leadership essay for HSP406. If you know me, you'll know that I really like daggy little graphics, so that's what I've done on the first slide of this presentation. I've got a picture of some computers in a library where you need to go and do some research. I've got a picture of some books because you'll need to do that as well. And I've got a picture of, well, kind of a picture of police officers doing leadership-y stuff. So that's what you're going to need to do for this particular assignment. You're going to have to think about your own practice in terms of leadership. You're going to have to do a bit of research and read about different types of leadership, particularly theories and models of leadership, right? And then you're going to be able to need to bring the two together and apply that by reading it all, thinking through it all, and of course typing it up. So this is just one of the assignments that you're submitting via the UTAS Milo sites, not at your residential. That's just a little reminder slide in there to let you know. So this assignment is due the end of week 5, Friday at midnight. It needs to be uploaded, and you can find the specific due dates on the Milo site. It's got a 2,000 word maximum word count, and that excludes references. It's weighted at 30% of your overall grade. So what you have to do is write an essay that discusses the difference between leadership and management. You need to reflect on your existing leadership experience, identify and discuss 2 contemporary leadership theories or models, for instance, transformational, transactional, post-industrial leadership. There's a whole bunch of different examples that I'll put up on the Milo site for you, that you think has informed your past leadership practice. Now, if you're really struggling with this, you can use the leadership practice of someone else. That's totally fine. A lot of people have said, well, I haven't really had that much leadership experience, but I've seen this guy over here who did a really crap job, so blah, 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 blah. So that's okay. Just don't use any names. That's totally fine if you want to do that sort of stuff. You just need to basically talk about how it's informed your practice as a leader in your organisation. Again, if you haven't had that experience yourself, you can talk about how the leadership of someone else that you've watched modelled on someone else has actually influenced the way that you do leadership. You have to draw on research literature and set readings to inform your response. Now, I like structure, so I always give you a suggested structure. You'll also find this on the Milo site. About a 200-word introduction, 1 paragraph, solid paragraph, not a series of sentences. You introduce the topic and give a roadmap of the key sections in your essay. So first, it will talk about. Second, it will discuss. Third, it will ruminate upon. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Then you need to compare and contrast leadership and management, all right? And you've only got about 500 words to do this. What does the research literature say about leadership and management and the differences between them? You'll need to read widely about this to understand a bit. Talk about the similarities and differences in that section. Then you need to discuss 2 theories or models of leadership and make reflective links to your own practice. And you've got about 1,000 words to do this with. You could structure this in a few different ways, so I'm giving you a couple of examples. So one person might describe their 2 theories first, then follow this with a section talking about, examples from their own practice. So you might say, one of the key elements of being a transformational leader is to be able to inspire and motivate people. I demonstrated inspiration and motivation in a recent blah thing that I did where I used this form of transformational leadership. Then you outline it. Then you link back to some research. That's the way that you would do this particular one. Other people might go a different way where they actually find the themes across both of the models or theories, right? And link in examples in each paragraph. So again, you might have a paragraph that talks about how being a transformational leader means you need to motivate and inspire people, right? But first you talk about the other research that talks about how to motivate and inspire in terms of transformational leadership. Then you bring in a little example, just a shorter one, to demonstrate your points. And then, you link that back with your research literature that you just outlined. It's quite simple. So that just gives you a couple of examples of how to actually structure that bit in the middle of the essay. Of course, you'll need a conclusion, as does any good essay, about 200 words, summarise the main points, talk about your future practice, okay? Talk about your future leadership practice in that respect. And then, of course, you need a list of references, and I'm suggesting Harvard referencing style is a good one. If you know a different one, that's totally fine too. Just let me know which one so I don't mark you down. A few tips. Using first-person language is totally fine. There are many, many different models and theories of leadership. So please don't kill yourself reading about every single blasted one of them. What I tend to find is really useful for this one is getting to know a little bit about each of them. I've got quite a lot of links to different, Harvard Business Review articles on leadership and so forth, where you can learn about different forms of leadership theories and then think, I think that one fits best with my practice, so I'll go and read about that one a bit more, okay? So that's the way that you can do that. Just be wary that some ways of doing leadership can be talked about as both a model and a theory. So that can be a little bit confusing. And some people use model and theory interchangeably, which is really interminably frustrating. So just use a variety of search terms when you're looking for your articles about, transformational leadership. You might want to put in transformational leadership theory, transformational leadership model, for instance, into the databases to find those articles that you need. Some more tips. Read the wording of your question very carefully. Don't overlook a certain part of the task. So someone might run straight in, give an overview of two theories, not link any of their practice in. Others might talk all about their practice and not even mention a single bloody theory. Please read it carefully. Be sure to include specific discussion and examples about your own practice so the links are clear. And this is not just a single sentence. Make sure you link it in and you give some good, some fairly thorough details so we can see the type of leadership that you're doing. Include one reference per paragraph at least. Check the marking rubric for more information about that, because it will tell you how many references you need to get a certain grade level. And then, of course, use your standard essay structure. Some common problems in past examples of students' essays like this one were not using research or literature to link in with your reflective practice. Reflective practice moves to analysis only when you link it in with your literature. So you might say, I'm a transformational leader because I did this thing, then describe it, blah, 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 blah. Smith talks about this as being a really important or crucial part of transformational leadership because blah, 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 blah. Link it. That's what makes it analysis. If you don't do that, it's just describing your leadership practice, which is not going to get you a very high mark. Other problems? Follow-on sentences, where people had two sentences joined together with the word however in the middle and a bunch of commas. Please don't do that. Check your grammar before you submit. Some people didn't use subheadings, and this is a really good way to check you've got all the different parts in your essay, and it's totally fine to use subheadings. Other problems, unclear paragraphing. A lot of people missed out linking or transition sentences that tell the reader the relevance of the material, why that material is there in the paragraph. They typically come at the end of the paragraph. It also provides you with your vertical thread, your argument in your essay, so that your reader can follow it throughout your response. Some people use too many quotes. Please keep these to a minimum. Remember that we are marking your work, not the work of Smith about transformational leadership. So if you have 50% of your work being quotes, you've only got 50% of the assignment task and you will be marked down. Use them sparingly. Imagine quotes skipping through your essay and they just tread on it occasionally. That's perfectly fine. Some people used unclear referencing. Things like not using page numbers for quotes. Very, very important that you use page numbers for quotes. Not essential for paraphrasing, where you've read a section, you've typed it up in your own words, but definitely essential for quotes. So make sure you do that. Okay, so the marking rubric that you've got, which is up online and it will be used to mark your assessment, gives you the parameters of the things that you need to cover off on. So you can see things in this one like articulate the differences between leadership and management, applying theoretical and practical knowledge about leadership to analyse your own leadership practices, and critically considering future practice. That's 3 really key things there that you have to make sure you're ticking the box for. And then we've got things around communication, which is where you're addressing the set task. This is pretty important. That's just a general one that tells you about, to make sure that you've actually done the right thing. So you're writing an essay rather than a literature review, if that makes sense, because they're actually very different. Using appropriate expression, English, punctuation, all of those types of things, making sure you've got an introduction and a conclusion, and that you've got clear, solid block paragraphs all the way through. And of course, attributing the work of others correctly by applying a referencing style. And I don't mind, as I said before, if you choose your own. So I will give you some resources, as I said, up online about how to structure an essay. Please go to those and read read and listen to that material so that you can learn about it, but making sure that you've got an introduction, a body, and a conclusion for this specific task, because it is an essay. So what does a paragraph look like for this assessment task? This is from other people's assignments from last year. I've just got one paragraph out of a section from a student's assignment where they compared management and leadership. And you can see here they've got an overall topic sentence, or a point, as I like to call it. The challenge for organisation is to balance management and leadership, which includes having managers who can lead and leaders who can manage, right? And then they talk more specifically about these elements. Leadership is a blah, blah, blah. Management is a prescribed process. They've used a little bit of quote, just one quote in here, and they've actually used a reference, although they haven't put in the page numbers, so be wary of that. And they've used other references to talk about leadership and so forth. And then they've got a nice little linking sentence that shows you the relevance of that material. It stands to reason that if senior executive of an organisation is not open to new ideas, then progressive concepts will not prevail. So just an overarching statement that kind of summarises and looks to your next paragraph. So what does a personal example paragraph look like? Now, this is where someone has focused on a specific element of leadership and they're talking through a personal example in more detail. I wanted to show you what this looked like. So managing a research project required engagement with a number of departments within my organisation to evaluate the prospect of using their skills, etc., etc. And then they talk through this specific example. You can see they've linked in Harrison as a form of research literature. And then at the end of the paragraph, and they've got quite a lot of detail here with their example. And then they've got these relationships continue to flourish with ongoing engagement, including participation in the post-evaluation, blah, 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 blah. So it's just a nice, again, summary linking back to that overall topic in that paragraph. So what does an introduction look like for one of these essays? This is another really great example. As you can see, it's totally okay to use references in an introduction, but you also need a really nice clear roadmap. So you introduce your topic first, then you talk about what you're going to do. By comparing management and leadership, this document will seek to understand, etc., etc. There's no intent to evaluate one capability over another. The document will then review two examples of personally experienced contemporary leadership styles. It will close or conclude by detailing the value of leadership for organisations. So that's a really great introduction, folks. Don't copy it or you'll get done for plagiarisms, but do use that as a nice example. And again, what does the conclusion look like? It's very straightforward. Just a summary of the overall topic area, as well as a summary of your key points. The two leadership styles discussed will work towards personal development, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and then looking to the future around leadership. Look, that really covers it off for this assignment, folks. I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. And I'll see you all with further information at the residentials. See you later.